This is Filmmasters, and on this episode, part 16 of building the Apprehension engine, we're going to finish both of our guitar necks. So we've got our large guitar neck has been completed, and as you can see, it is sitting there and it's sitting nicely. And we're going to be starting to work on the small guitar neck now. So I'm using the smaller material. We're going to make sure the measurement is 4 inches, exactly the same. In fact, all the measurements for this is almost the same as the large guitar neck when we are going in and chiseling off our end piece, which obviously attaches to the Apprehension engine. So I'm going to make sure it's 4 inches based on my box and based on the measurements. I'm just going to use a rule and I'm going to measure it halfway through the material. And we're obviously going to line or put a measurement around it so it's halfway thickness of the actual neck itself. And then we're going to chisel it out exactly the same as the large one. So you may have jumped the gun and simply done the same thing with the smaller one. And that's exactly what we're doing in this one. In the next tutorial, obviously, which will be part 17, we're going to be putting our soundboard on the top. We're going to cut it out so that the hurdy-gurdy wheel fits in there nicely. And then we're going to obviously finish that box off by putting the necks on there and putting the last pieces of the box together before we move into the electronics. Yes, that's right. We're about to get into the electronics. But at the moment, we're working on the small neck. So I'm just going to go around and same as I did with the larger neck, I'm going to make the measurement half. I'm going to use a chisel and I'm going to chisel it through. And this is again exactly the same as the large neck. So obviously I'm going around with the chisel and just gently tapping it until it starts to work its way through, following the line, and the material will start lifting up, as you can see here. Now I've obviously sped up this video because you don't need to see it in real time, but again, you can do it this way. The other option is you can use a saw if you're not competent with a chisel. You can use a saw and just take your time and cut through the material by putting it in a vise and sawing it down. And the reason obviously we're cutting the material down by half is because we want the necks to sit a little bit lower so that the strings are going to obviously going to have pickups underneath them, as well as the fact that we're going to have a hurdy-gurdy wheel on the larger one. So I'm obviously using a sander as well, just to sand it, make sure it's nice and flush. Again, it's about making sure it's nice and square because we need to make sure that it sits nicely. If you don't make this part nice and square, obviously the necks are going to sit up differently on your box and they won't look right. So take your time and make sure that you get that part ready to go. So here we have the small guitar neck has been done, and that's the part that hangs up onto the box and will be screwed in eventually. So what we're going to do is turn it around and we're going to do the same on the other side. Now the measurement I'm going to use for this though is 2.5 inches. Now I'm going to be using 2.5 inches, and the reason we're cutting this part out is because this is where the tuners will go for the guitar neck. So with the smaller guitar neck, we're going to have 3 tuners on there. And then obviously on the larger neck, there's going to be 2 because we're going to have the 2 wires. Now I do know that with the Apprehension engine version 2, that is being built by Tony Duggan-Smith. He's made it so that the new version actually has 3 strings, but we're going to be basing it on the old Apprehension engine that Mark Korven uses, which has the 2 strings on it. So it's entirely up to you if you want to put 3 strings, but we're going to be basing it on 2, so therefore we'll only have the 2. Now, I was just showing you then in that video, I was starting to use a saw to cut down. So if you don't use a chisel, you can use a saw to cut down this part. So again, it's 2.5 inches and it's designed so that we can put our guitar necks through it. Now you can do this as an option on the larger guitar neck. You can do the same thing using 2.5 inches and cutting it down. I won't be, but you can do it if you're wanting to have it so that your actual Apprehension engine guitar necks stick a little bit higher. Now, if you do that, obviously it's going to be slightly different in measurements. Again, it's entirely up to you. But obviously for this tutorial, I'm going to be doing it the basic way. So I'm just going to be using 3 tuners or guitar tuners for this neck. Whereas the other larger guitar neck will have 2. So as you can see, it's sitting there nicely and flush and exactly the same. We're going to be using those parts that I was using from the first one, which is the larger guitar neck. We're going to be now putting our support bracket in. And there's our support bracket that will be gluing into place, and obviously our brace that we'll be using to stop the guitar necks from lifting up on the wood or buckling. So again, make sure that the support is flush against the joint which you've chiseled out, as you can see here. Now I'm not going to show you how I'm gluing these parts in. They're exactly the same as the previous tutorial, so follow that to put the support in and to put your brace in. And then we have it. There's our two necks done. Obviously we are going to be moving on to the next tutorial shortly, which is going to be applying our soundboard and finishing off the rest of the Apprehension engine box. So I'm just going to make sure that they're sitting nicely, and they are. So we're ready to go. So if you want to become a Filmmaster subby, it is pretty simple. You can subscribe to the channel. You can like me on Facebook and or on Twitter. Until next time, don't just film it, master it.